Thanks for coming. I appreciate it very much. My name is Merrick Masters, and I'm Director of Labor at Wayne. This is the third of a series of 3 workshops that my colleague Alan Bateau and I have put on. The first one, if you recall, was on February the 24th on negotiating at work that I presented. The second was on March the 10th on business communications that Jane Fitzgibbon of the Department of Communications presented. And this is the third that Alan Bateau of the Department of Anthropology is putting on project management. I know that many of you have been to at least one of the previous 2. We thank you for attending. And Professor Alan Bateau is a distinguished professor of anthropology who has done a lot of work in the area of project management, and I'll let him tell more about his work in that area. He's done work in the private sector in this area, in the engineering aspect of it, and software engineering, so he has had a lot of real-world experience, which gives him a lot of practical knowledge about how project management works. And it is a very useful skill that is widely used in the public and private sector. Before he gets started, I think it might be useful to just go around the table and have you introduce yourselves and tell us what program that you're from, and then I'll turn things over to him. So why don't we start with you, Neil?
Sure. My name's Neil Pettit. I'm graduating in May from the Labor Studies program, and I currently intern at the National Labor Relations Board.
Hi, I'm Ashley Rice, and I'm working on my bachelor's in information systems and manufacturing.
Hi, my name is Dora Dusti. I'm a graduate student in economics.
Hi, I'm Saad Yusuf. I'm pursuing my bachelor's in marketing.
My name is Heidi Knega. I work in a graduate school for a grant support program called BEST. I used to teach an adjunct education.
My name is Rochelle Lamacchio, and I'm a graduate student in the School of Library Information Science.
I'm Maria Rodi. I'm a recent PhD graduate in Wayne State's Anthropology Department, and currently I'm working with Alan Bateau on an Imagine Praise project.
Yeah. And I'm Alan Bateau. It may be a question on your mind of, well, what the hell does an anthropologist know about project management? Well, I can tell you that in my career, both before coming to Wayne State and at Wayne State, I've managed projects with budgets totaling about $15 million altogether. And about a third of that has been, more like a half of that has been here at Wayne State. Okay, there's some basic principles of project management. None of this is rocket science, and again, once you kind of grasp the basic principles, you can work out the details, but it's something you got to wrap your arms around. Now, I'm going to start off with the next one. I sent Merrick my slides, which you have in your packet, but then yesterday and today I did some revisions, so there's not a complete congruence between what you have in your packets and here, but I tried to make it, come on. And, oh, there we go, okay. This computer is a little bit slow, okay. Okay, just a quick overview. We're going to talk about setting the context is a very important, critical part of it that often, because unless you, with your team and with your customer, you share a context, then the possibilities for misunderstanding are immense. Okay, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. Managing the customer, we don't often think about that, but yes, as project manager, even before your team, you manage your customer. Budget, schedule, deliverables, that's very straightforward. Team management, you've got it, typically on a project, you've got a team and your responsibility is to manage your team. We're also going to talk a little bit about visual management. Okay, visuals, whether PowerPoint slides or Gantt charts, are powerful tools keeping everybody on the same page. Okay. Okay, project management mentality. See this, once you wrap your mind around kind of this, then everything falls into place. And the basic idea is, as a project manager, you're not an employee. There's an employee mentality. Tell me what to do, boss. But the project management mentality is, I'm going to take charge of this. I'm going to be responsible for this. And I can look forward. I can kind of improvise. I can see where we're going. I own the project. Okay. In other words, you have to be emotionally invested in the project. Okay. Step 0, selling the project, selling yourself. Now, you note how I started off bragging a little bit. Well, if you can back it up, it's not bragging. Okay. And what I was doing was selling myself, because now that you know that I've managed many large projects, okay, maybe you have some confidence in what I'm going to tell you. So in other words, and this is one thing that's completely alien in the academic world, but completely normal in the business world. Sell. Sell yourself, sell your project. Okay, I mean, you've been handed a project, been told, here's what we want you to do, but you still got to sell the project. Okay, you got to sell the project to the different stakeholders, you got to sell yourself. This is building confidence. Okay. Now, we sometimes joke about the difference between competence and confidence. Okay. All of you are educated men and women, and any project you get into, you're going to be at least 80% competent, but you want the customer to have 100% confidence. So you have to, first of all, have confidence in yourself. If you don't have confidence in yourself, the customer will smell it, the team will smell it. So kind of, you have to sell the project to yourself. Okay. One way you do this is with your credentials, your degrees, with your experience having managed similar projects. As you go through your careers, you'll accumulate a list of projects. This is, you know, have you seen military people? They have stripes. They have chests full of medals, and they have stripes for years in service and chests for different battles. Well, your projects, that's your experience. Okay, you can't exactly wear it on your sleeve, but you do have to be prepared to bring it out, saying, "Here's what makes me competent." Okay, critical part of all this is clarifying expectations, both of your customer and of your team and whoever else is a stakeholder. So you read back. They tell you what they want, and then you read it back. Here's what I heard you say. Okay, because if you have a mismatch here at the front end, okay, then it's all downhill from there. Okay, we have a concept in anthropology of low context. And what this means, different kinds of situations are high context and low context. Okay, high context, some of you come from close-knit families and you can read each other's minds and finish each other's sentences. That's high context. Okay, you don't need to spell things out. Okay, low context, think of when you're a stranger in a strange city and you don't understand what's going on. You want somebody to spell it out. Okay, that's low context. Okay, and kind of you want to assume that this is, at least to begin with, a low context situation. As you go through the project, you'll build your own context, and after a while, everything will flow smoothly. One of the most rewarding projects I once worked on, there was a team of 3 of us. Okay, myself, the anthropologist, General Motors guy, and an EDS, electronic data systems guy. Okay, and we had 1 month to do a study of users' expectations. Okay, the 3 of us were as unlike as you could imagine. Okay, we are completely different backgrounds, but because we had a fixed schedule, because we were working together, after a week or 2, things began to gel. Okay, that's what you want. Okay. Okay. Part of clarifying expectations is ethical expectations. Okay. Now, you might say, well, that sounds kind of preachy. Well, every project has a potential for ethical pitfalls. Okay. And every one of you, your different professional societies and professional affiliations have codes of ethics. And my experience has been that the customer does appreciate, bring it up at the front end. In other words, if 3 months into a project you say, hey, wait, that's not ethical, you've caused problems. But if at the front end you say, look, we're just going to abide by such and such code of ethics, the customer will appreciate it. And then 3 months later, if you have to raise your hand and say, wait, we got a problem here, everybody has been forewarned. Okay. One thing we absolutely insist on is a kickoff meeting. Okay. I've had customers say, well, do we really need that? And the answer is hell yes. Okay. Okay. We get everybody together, we review the project plan, we review the schedule, we start to get acquainted with each other. Kickoff meetings are so essential. And I've seen projects that just kind of petered out because we didn't have a kickoff meeting. So I absolutely insist on a kickoff meeting, okay, on every project. Okay. Part of your responsibility is to manage the client. Okay. And I mean, I'm just going to do this lightly. Basic points here are the last two. As the project manager, you have to see farther than everybody else. Scan the horizon, anticipate things coming up. Always say, is there anything else I should know about? Are we all clear on this? No surprises. Okay. Budget, schedule. This is the Project Management 101, budget, schedule, and deliverables. And in theory, I mean, that's cut and dried. Schedules, so many days, budget, so many dollars, deliverables. In any project, you have a list of deliverables. It's usually negotiable. Okay. But you don't want to bring that up. Okay. You want to assume, you don't want to be negotiating the schedule until you really get in a jam. Okay. I mean, because when you build a schedule, you always want to put some slack in the schedule. And when you build a budget, you always want to put a little extra in the budget. Okay. Now, there's a little perverse thing here in public institutions. It's a big mistake to have money left over in your budget. So part of your job as a project manager is sometimes figuring out how to spend money in a hurry. That's what my grandmother called high-class worries. Okay. But the deadlines, especially, and this has always been my experience, that deadlines can be adjustable. And really, you have to get to know your team and your clients to know just how much wiggle room you have in the schedule. Deliverables, I mean, key thing is what constitutes a good deliverable? What are the standards for a deliverable? This project I'm working on right now about high-speed rail, we submitted a report a couple of weeks ago, and there really was no standards. They did not give us any criteria for here's what we want in your report, so we kind of overdid it perhaps, but we produced a report that I think will set the standard. I mean, we're working with partners in France and elsewhere, so the more you can understand what they are expecting, and we had some comparable reports to compare ourselves to, but when you think deliverables, not just quantity and quality, but also standards, okay? In budget, dollars, of course, but sometimes that includes facilities or maybe kind of some intangible resources. This computer tends to be slow. Okay, this is a slide that's not in your packet. Again, responsibilities of the project manager. You have overall responsibility. Budget, deliverables, recruitment of personnel, public relations, client communications, everything is yours. It's all on your plate. Okay, and basic rule of management, responsibility cannot be delegated. You can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility. So the buck stops with you. And once you communicate that you understand that, you've inspired a lot of confidence. What works well sometimes is a take charge attitude. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Now you might be kind of figuring this out as you go along, but kind of the attitude that I'm going to push this forward. Okay. I'm going to skip this because it's not in your packet, and we do. As the leader, okay, you know the big picture. You have comprehensive responsibility. Okay, you work on the team relationships. You have to manage the client, external stakeholders. You come to embody the project. If people begin to think of this as Alan's project, well, hopefully that's good. Hopefully Alan is not screwing up. But see, that's a source of authority as well. Okay, let me skip this as well. Okay, so project management, this is kind of a checklist: people, resources, time, communications, client relationships, cost, quality, delivery. Can we email them these revised slides?
Yep.
Okay, we will do that. Okay. Okay, here's where I want to, you do have this. And this is a tool that I found extremely useful. It's called a context diagram. Does anybody recognize the notation here, right, Louis? Okay, it comes from the software world. Okay, and essentially, this is called a constraint diagram. And essentially, a context is bounded by 4 constraints: inputs, outputs, controls, and resources or mechanisms. Okay, the inputs are transformed into the outputs according to the controls using the resources. Okay, so for any project, and in the middle of the box you have a verb phrase saying what we're doing, like building a house or staging a concert. Okay, when I was teaching this technique in some military settings, I gave them an assignment to do a context diagram for the activity of have a cup of coffee. Very simple, have a cup of coffee. Very interesting pattern came out as we modeled the whole process of have a cup of coffee. The women in the class always included washing up afterwards, and the guys never did. And some people, their model for have a cup of coffee is to put a quarter in the machine and get the cup of coffee. So, I mean, see, this is visual management. This is kind of a way of communicating. Here's what we're talking about. Okay. And come on. Okay, so to instantiate this, okay, we could have an activity, build a house. The inputs are lumber, concrete, raw materials, shingles, nails, etc. Controls are your building permits and your architectural plans. Tools are resources, carpenters, plumbers, tools, and the output is the completed house. Okay. Now see, if it was a prefab house, this would look somewhat different, but because that would be a different context. Okay. Okay, so once we've set that context, then we can create a work breakdown structure, which is key part of this. Okay, so in that activity, build a house, I can identify at least 6 different sub-activities. Develop vision plans. Okay, maybe sit down with the homeowner. Create and acquire plans and permits, order materials, hire carpenters, etc., build the house, periodic inspections, and then the final inspection. Note that the actual activity of building the house is only kind of one of several other activities. And that's how it always works, that we focus on something, but there's always all this other stuff going around. That's completely typical. Okay. Now, key part of this is managing the customer. In other words, you don't want your customers' expectations to be up here when all that you're prepared to deliver is down here. You got big problems. Okay. You would much rather your customers' expectations be about here, and you're prepared to deliver up here. You have a surprised and delighted customer. So kind of clarifying the expectations, make clear what the project boundaries are. Periodic feedback from the customer. How am I doing? Okay, there was a mayor of New York years ago who always, how am I doing? Well, I mean, that's a good kind of way of eliciting feedback. Okay, budget. Okay, you keep a journal or a ledger. In other words, all your expenditures. If you're not familiar with Excel, get familiar with Excel. I mean, spreadsheets are well, I'll put it more strongly, that if you're a project manager and you can't show your customer a spreadsheet of how your budget is going, you're in trouble. Using spreadsheets are an absolute must nowadays. Okay, but also as project manager, you want to watch your burn rate. In other words, if you've got a 5-month project with a $100,000 budget, okay, and 2 months into the project, you spent $80,000 of your budget. Was that good or bad? Well, we don't know, but you should know that 40% through my schedule and 80% through my budget. You watch your burn rate. I mean, this kind becomes especially critical in startups. Okay, startup companies, they have an initial capitalization and they burn through it, and they hope that they start generating income before they burn up all the initial offering. So burn rate is one other thing that you watch here. Okay, just a spreadsheet example here. Okay, personnel, as you can see, is quite typically large part of your budget, and you have your total salaries, you have fringe benefits, you have expenses. If you're working in an institutional context, you probably have institutional overhead to add to this, but that's just an example of what you do with this spreadsheet. Okay, managing the schedule. Okay, here, if you don't walk away with anything else new, this should be it. We use a number of tools, including I'll define all of these in a second. Gantt charts, PERT charts. Here, for example, here's a Gantt chart, sometimes called a timeline. And I'm going to show you the software that created this momentarily. Okay, but you note, okay, let me just read, that may be too far away, so let me read down those, say the first 10 tasks. Conduct project kickoff. Remember I said that's always first? Brief stakeholders, okay, because your team is at the kickoff, maybe your customer, but there's going to be more stakeholders, okay. Conduct a town hall of potential beneficiaries, okay. Create an extended project team. Now what I mean by that, by extended project team, is anybody who's going to be lifting a finger to help you. Maybe they're not on your payroll, but they're people that you want to bring along. Okay. Develop an initial requirements document, revise requirements document, release final requirements. Okay. This is obviously a software development project. Create website and wiki. Okay, why not? Train extended project team on that's the project tool, and so forth. In other words, and what I want you to note here is that these arrows indicate dependencies. Okay. In other words, we can't begin this task, create functional decomposition, until we've trained. We can't begin this task until we've completed this task. Okay. And part of building these charts is to identify where one task waits till others end. Okay. And you have estimated duration. Okay. The kickoff is a milestone. Okay. This symbol indicates a milestone. Okay. And the final milestone, of course. So you develop your work breakdown structure. You estimate how many days for each. Now, you might ask, well, how the hell do I estimate how many days for each? Well, experience helps. Good advisors help. I mean, if you can always find somebody who can kind of give you advice on different tasks. Okay. You'll notice one of the longest tasks there is revise requirements document, 65 days. Okay. Well, in the software industry, we go round and round and round developing these documents. So some tasks last longer than others. Okay. But notice also, okay, here, I think this is kind of cute. Develop initial requirements document and revise requirements document. This one really just gives us a milestone of the final. Other tasks don't wait for this one to be finished, okay? Because we develop the initial requirements document and then we move ahead with developing the software. Right? Okay, that's just an example of kind of my judgment in this case that we didn't need the requirements document to be perfect to move ahead. Okay. Now, one thing this software does, okay, aside from move slowly, okay, is creates PERT charts. PERT stands for Program Evaluation Review Technique. Okay, and this is kind of a different visual display of the same thing, but there's one thing that, and it has the tasks, it has start, finish, number of days. One thing this does for you is it helps you figure out the critical path. Okay. Now the critical path, okay, let's see, where was it? I'll get to the critical path in a moment. Let me just, okay. First of all, task interdependencies. Task Y cannot be completed until task X is somewhat complete. Full dependency, it has to be complete. Partial dependency, maybe 25% complete or 50%. You really have to think through each task. How much of task A do I have to be done before I get to task B? If every task has to be 100% complete before the next task is done, then that stretches out your schedule. Okay, and if you have a small team, maybe that's necessary. Okay, see, you're juggling here both your schedule and your resources. Okay, if you can do multiple tasks together, okay, then that speeds up the schedule. Okay. Okay. So on this, you can't see it, but kind of, you make a judgment. How much can I move ahead with the next task while waiting for the first task to be finished? Okay. And also, and this is absolutely a key thing for you as a project manager, what resources do I need to assign to this? Okay. Now, useful tool in this is inputs and outputs. Okay. Inputs are transformed into outputs. Do I describe the inputs in great detail or just with great generality? Well, it depends on who you're working with. Maybe if your task is building a house and you've got an experienced team of carpenters, you don't need to spell it out. You can just say, here, put a wall up there, and they'll know what to do. Okay. But if you have nothing but apprentices, you probably need to spell it out a little bit more. Okay, here's the key thing here, critical path. Okay. The critical path is the largest path through the complete array, the longest path through the complete array of tasks. Okay. Because the critical path determines the overall timeline of your project. Other tasks, maybe you can pull forward, okay, but your job as project manager is to manage the critical path. In other words, critical means critical. If a task is not on the critical path, you don't worry about it so much. If a task is on the critical path, you do worry about it, because if that task is delayed, you're screwed. Okay, so you keep the critical path moving forward. Okay, what I'd like to do, does everybody have pads of paper here? Does everybody have some paper? Let's do a quick exercise for a very, 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 very simple project. Build a table. Okay. We'll all do this together just to keep it simple. Okay. What are the different activities involved in building a table? Research? Okay.
Figuring out what kind of table you want to build.
Okay, specifying, yeah. Okay.
Gotta purchase materials.
What? Purchasing materials.
You may need to hire somebody if you pick a table that, needs a certain type of woodwork.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of metalwork. You need to maybe put together a small team.
Assemble the team, right? We haven't even gotten to nailing the parts together yet.
Yeah, you gotta design the table.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is just a little illustration that if the context can be narrow or the context can be broad. Okay, and the fact that you said research, it would have never occurred to me that research was part of building a table. But see, there's no right or wrong answers to this. Okay, there's no right or wrong answers, but if we as a team, meaning the 10 of us sitting around this table, say that we think some research should be done, then that's the right answer. Okay. On the other hand, okay, and this is a good illustration that we're sitting around the table. Okay, we're discussing the whole task of building a table, and you're very insistent that we have to do some research. Really, got to do research. If you can persuade the rest of us, then okay, then that's part of our task. That research is inside that box called the activity. Okay, and once we as a team agree on that, then we're moving forward. But if we don't clarify that, then you could be going off doing research, and Merrick here would say, what the hell is he doing? Why the hell is he doing research? We didn't agree on that. No. So just clarifying the context and really agreeing on what's inside the box and what's not, okay, is part of the task, part of the project management. Now see, maybe when I say build a table, I mean just a very, 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 very simple table with 4 legs in the top, and that's it. Okay, then you don't need research. Okay, but if you have greater stylistic ambitions, then probably we do. Okay. Okay. And this kind of follows on for that. Deliverables. With building a table, we have one deliverable, the table. Okay, and you want to clearly specify how many legs does a table have? Usually. There have been tables with more than 4 legs. How many legs does this table have? It doesn't. It's like 2 pedestals. Okay. So we need to clarify just what we mean by table, and with conference tables, sometimes they don't have legs. Okay. Quality standards. Okay. Now, practically every trade has quality standards of one sort or another. I mean, I'm sure within the furniture industry there are standards for what constitutes a good finish. You don't necessarily need to look those up, but you maybe have some concept. I want the finish on the table to be like this. Okay, in other words, something that you can compare it to. And finally, review procedures. In other words, with your customer, when you finish the table, is he happy with it? Okay, and leave a little bit of slack in your schedule, because if the customer is unhappy, you want a few more days to fix it. Okay, I mean, managing deliverables is fairly straightforward compared to managing your team. Okay, okay, and there's several parts to this. Qualification. In other words, what kinds of qualifications do your team members have? If you're building a table, you want them to be skilled at furniture making or carpentry. You probably would not want to hire Merrick or me to build your table. Okay. On the other hand, if the project was about doing some sort of research, well, that's a task we can do. In other words, so qualifying the team, kind of what qualifications you want, and obviously for more complex projects, the qualifications are more complex. I've already mentioned kickoff meetings, clear assignments and schedules. Your team will thank you for this. Okay, that, I mean, you can assume This is kind of a big difference between project work and routine work. That on project work, you can assume people are motivated, at least to begin with. Now, 9 months into the project, they may be getting bored and wondering when this is going to be over. But at least for the first few months of the project, everybody's highly motivated. And if they're clear on what you're expecting and clear on the schedule, they will rise to the occasion. Okay, so be very, very, very clear, very articulate as possible on tasks and schedules. And those Gantt charts there, that's what that is perfect for, because people can read that, they can see, okay, I have so many more days to finish this. Okay. Things to avoid, frequent changes in direction. You're allowed only 1 or 2 changes in direction before people start to question your competence. Okay. And that kind of means sometimes, okay, if part of your job as project manager is to think 2 weeks or 2 months ahead and say, oh, if we keep going in this direction, we're going to be screwed. So maybe let's make some adjustment now rather than 2 weeks from now have to completely do a U-turn. Okay, in other words, seeing ahead. Don't want frequent changes. Regrouping, this is a term that comes from social work. Regrouping is where relationships within a group are renegotiated. I think it's kind of a neat term, because think of any group that you've been part of, okay, that after a few hours or a few days, you started to adjust, okay, and have some expectations of each of the other people, and they kind of have expectations of you. Okay, this is completely typical and normal. But then if you have to scramble it up, whether by breaking the team up or maybe moving to a new location or maybe taking on some new tasks, something that alters the group dynamics, people will be confused. So respect the group. Sometimes you do have to regroup. Sometimes that's inevitable. Okay, and it's far, far, far better if you realize we're going to have a change in direction. We're going to have to make some adjustments. Okay, announce it to the team. Okay, team, this is the way we've been going, that we've been doing good work, but something come up, so we have to make some adjustments. Spell it out. You can regroup if you negotiate it. Okay, group dynamics are negotiated, so regrouping has to be negotiated. Unrealistic expectations, both by you and by them. If you have unrealistic expectations of how quickly they can finish a task, well, they might try and crash and burn, but it's far better to keep the expectations realistic. Okay. Now you mentioned previously about visual management, Gantt charts, obviously. A poster, kind of something, a visual that people can identify with. That's kind of, maybe the poster will be a picture of your project team. In other words, give the project a visual identity. Okay. Maybe a list of deliverables up on the office. In other words, something that people can look up and be reminded of, here's what we're doing, here's what the project is all about. Visual management is a very, very, very strong tool. I mean, here in the university, we're sometimes a little bit too word-oriented, okay, and we neglect visuals. Well, certainly, I think that's a mistake. Okay, and one thing I've tried to overcome that with for different projects, I have a logo. hire a graphic artist, graphic designer to create a logo for the project. Okay, because again, it gives people something to identify with. Other visual tools, I mentioned posters already, cheat sheets, in other words, little something you keep in your pocket. Here's what I'm supposed to be doing today. LOA. Anybody know what an LOA is? List of acronyms. Now, in high context situations, like the military, they're terrible. Throw around the acronyms. And usually it's a problem of TLAs. Does anybody know what a TLA is? 3-letter acronym. Yeah, okay, I'm being cute here, but with a serious point. Okay, that acronyms are identity markers. Okay, every institution has them. Okay, the more diverse your team is, the more you need this. Okay, I mean, here's just little. What's a familiar acronym at Wayne State?
WSU.
Right? Okay. Anybody not know what that stands for? Okay. Give me one more. A Wayne State acronym.
SPA.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. Who knows what SPA is?
Special payment authorization.
Oh, but it's two things, that's what's tricky. It's both the department and ELEs to these clients.
Yeah, SPA is also the Sponsored Projects Administration. Okay, this is why we have a LOA. Okay. Okay. Part of your responsibility as a project manager is periodic reviews. Okay, and it's a mistake to think that people don't appreciate being managed. Okay, because being managed means here's what we're doing, here's what we're expecting to do. Your customer, your client, your team, your stakeholders, everybody. The management review is an opportunity to either reassure ourselves that we're on track or maybe get ourselves back on track. Okay, and the format that I use for this, okay, 4 items. Here's what we did, here's what we accomplished, here's some problems we encountered, here's the next step. You can do that on one page. Activities, accomplishments, problems, next steps. Okay, very straightforward, very simple, and very effective. Okay. Part of getting the project started, okay, is, and this is something I developed a tool for many years ago, is just assessing the team. Okay, what skills do they have? How much time are they committing to the project? What social capital do they have? Social capital means who you know, who's in your network. What social resources can you bring in? Okay, experience and skills. In other words, this is kind of a checklist. Here's what I want to keep in mind about my team. Okay, this project I'm currently working on, we've got a great team, partly because we're all interested in the same subject, which is transportation, but we have 4 completely different backgrounds. Myself, an anthropologist, my colleague at another university, a sociologist, my colleague at another university, an urban planner, and finally, one other team member who is a locomotive engineer. Okay. And I'm not making this, the team fits together fairly well. And he has many things, many insights about trains that would never occur to the rest of us. So a team can be very diverse if there's something that pulls them together. Okay, scoping the project. Okay, the three elements of scope are size, complexity, and sophistication. In other words, let's just take building a table, for example. If all there is in building a table is cutting 4 2x4s into legs and nailing on a piece of plywood, that's very simple. I could do that. That's not very sophisticated. Okay. A table like this is a bit more complex. A table like this also, just the size of it. I mean, how do you build a table like this? I don't have a clue. Okay. But final issue in scoping is the politics. Okay. Whose boat is this going to rock? If the scope is so ambitious, there's maybe somebody out there that's going to get upset by it. Okay, you got to kind of keep that in mind. Ideally, if you're going to rock boats, be prepared to rock boats. Okay. Okay, now a couple more things before we get to an exercise of scoping a project. Resources, that's the arrow coming from the bottom. Budget and schedule, obviously. Team commitment and morale. In other words, is the team really enthused about it and ready to work 60 hours a week? Or are they dragging their tails and saying, well, I guess I'll do this because the boss told me? Well, you've got to have a realistic assessment of that. Environmental support. Every project you're going to do is in some larger institutional environment. Does the institution support this? What's the institution's expectations? Okay. One of my project management rules, keep the real schedule in your hip pocket. Okay. Because you have the published schedule up there, and then you have in your hip pocket or in your mind, here's what I really got to do. Okay. Your real schedule may be more aggressive than the published schedule. But see, if you publish that, then they're going to say, oh, you told me you needed 4 weeks, and now you're saying you don't need 3? Okay, you've got 3 weeks. Okay, so better to kind of play that one close to your vest, okay, rather than let everybody know the real schedule. Now this is one that I developed from my work in military projects, and that's the command authority. Okay. This works out completely different in different environments, but in the military, we found that sometimes people would be tasked with some project, but really not given the authority to carry it out. Okay. Or maybe given a project, but really not given support for it. Let me give you, I'll give you my favorite illustration because I think very highly of this guy. Project I did at General Motors many years ago. The project leader, he was a very insightful guy. I think part of his problem was he was African American, but he had the insight that what delays the engineering job is not the actual work of engineering, but the management overhead, the engineering systems, okay, how we manage and administer engineering. So he wanted to streamline the engineering process by streamlining its administration. I thought that was very interesting insight, and so we had this project. But then about, I would say 6 or 8 months into the project, it became crystal clear that he had been given a sandbox. Okay? And what I mean by that is he had been agitating about this whole issue of management overhead and systems and so forth. So finally, and this is typical General Motors. Okay. This is General Motors from 30 years ago. They obviously don't do things quite like this nowadays. He had been agitating about this, and so finally they got tired of Odell talking about this and said, okay, here's a team. work with them, go do it. But they were not prepared to implement any of his recommendations. Okay, so sandbox is kind of a general mode. They gave him a sandbox, played around in it for 6 or 8 months, got frustrated and gave up. Okay, I mean that happens all the time in the corporate world. It happens also in the military. Okay, far better for you to know this kind of command environment and know if you're getting into something like that. The culture of command. Okay. Okay. Again, and this is very much part of the corporate culture, and some corporations have high expectations. If we ask you to do something, we're going to support you in doing it. Other corporations have weak expectations. Okay, so that's kind of something you got to psych out. Okay. Ideally, in managing your project, you'll align your project objectives with what the guys up there are expecting. Ideally, okay. It takes a little bit of insight, or a hell of a lot of insight, to figure that out. Okay, and final step in all this, work breakdown structure. There's several ways to do this. Gantt chart is one, just an indented list, major task, minor task. In other words, if you take an overall task like building a car, you can break it down many different levels. Okay. On the other hand, for a skilled craftsman, he doesn't need that kind of breakdown. He knows kind of how to do this. Many of you are probably familiar with Frederick Taylor in Scientific Management, who broke tasks down in minute detail. Well, that's one way of doing it. But your judgment call is, well, how finely do I break these tasks down? Okay. So I showed you this diagram. Does everybody have a pad of paper or something to write on? Create a work breakdown structure for have a cup of coffee. And again, the first step is to create this context diagram of inputs, outputs, controls, and mechanisms. So, step one, draw a big picture. Excuse me. Draw a big box. Inside the box, you say, have a cup of coffee. Identify your inputs, outputs, controls, and so forth. You should probably get going
Yeah,
first.
Ken Erickson called.
You didn't answer it, did you?
No.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so, excuse me. Is everybody done? What activities did you have for have a cup of coffee? Let's go around.
For inputs, I had.
No, this is just work breakdown structure right now.
You told us to put a box with the arrows, right?
That's true. Yeah, but I want to hear your work breakdown structure. Anybody have a work breakdown structure?
I sort of do.
Okay.
Yeah, well, first thing was to make coffee. I make coffee, French press. So, there's a couple extra steps. So you make the coffee, but a subtask of making the coffee is grinding the coffee, putting it in the French press. And the next task would be boiling water, which would be happening simultaneously, but boiling water. Then you put the water in the French press. Well, if you get the cup.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have something that contrasts with that?
Right. See, I read have a cup of coffee as being either you go out or you go home. So, select location, distance, cost, and ambiance. Check to see I have cash, tell my spouse I'm going out. Get in the car, do I have gas? Starbucks. Or I go to Big East Post when I get I try to select the lowest costing and lowest in sugar and fat at the same time, if that's possible. Pay, where I check to see if I have cash. And then select the ideal spot for either reading or people watching. That's what I do when I go to Starbucks. assuming it go out, but I would do about the same thing. But then I would be having coffee with daughter, so I included the group, you know, where, okay, kid, let's have coffee. It was pretty much the same.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, I did the flip diagram.
Oh, well, tell us about your diagrams a second.
Okay, for inputs, I have water, chocolate, and ground coffee. And I couldn't figure out the controls, but for outputs, I have fresh coffee, and for mechanisms, I got barista coffee shop.
Well, the control is obviously your taste.
Cream or sugar?
Yeah. Well, some people have absolutely no taste and they'll just take any kind of dark water. Others have very refined taste. And that makes for a different process. Yeah. Well, what did you have?
Same thing, except for the control, cream or sugar, I like double, so. And then, it's the only difference.
Yeah. Well, strictly speaking, well, okay, the preference for cream and or sugar is a control, but the actual cream and sugar are inputs. Yeah. Okay, let's take this a step further. If the computer will cooperate. There. Okay. Okay, so take your work breakdown structure, and for each activity, identify the mechanisms or resources, how much time. Now the sequence is fairly obvious, so we're not going to worry about it, but we'll kind of assume a linear process here. So for each activity, identify the resources and identify how much time you need. We'll see who's most efficient in having a cup of coffee. Okay, let's see, try for the two extremes. Who has the most efficient, quickest process for having a cup of coffee? Well, who wants to step forward?
I feel I probably have the longest.
Okay, we'll start at the opposite extreme.
Okay,
What are your activities?
well, we went through the activities.
Yeah.
So most of them take about 2 seconds, because making coffee in the grinder, it's like almost instantaneous.
Yeah.
Getting the things out, pretty instantaneous. The longest things are boiling the water. I'd say on average, depending on how large French press you're using, maybe like 5 minutes while the boil on the kettle. 3 minutes for the coffee to steep. I'm a slow coffee drinker, so it's about 60 minutes just drinking the coffee. So we're looking at 68 minutes and 10 seconds.
Well, I would say the one thing you could speed up would be to start boiling the water before you do anything else.
Oh, I see what you're saying, so.
Yeah,
you're
that's called
talking
parallel
about
processing.
things- Oh, I see, okay.
Okay.
I was just looking at all the processes separately,
Yeah.
not as a,
Well,
how long the process would take,
Yeah.
not, I see what you're saying.
yeah. Okay. Now, I think you don't have the longest.
Oh, okay.
It's about the same. I always put the water on first.
But wait, but your process was to go out to Starbucks.
Oh, right, the only other one? Well, that's like, I look to see if I have cash, how much gas I have. That's where I start off first. I mean, if I don't have any cash on hand, because I don't use my card for coffee. And, or I have little gas I need to get to work, then that's the end of it. And then I stay home and use the press. That's it. That determines everything. Occasionally, my husband will object and say, make it at home. No, but I just leave it at that. That's pretty much it for me. The whole thing would be maybe 45 minutes. That's because I do live relatively close to a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And people watching can take some time. But no, I mean, for a home, the first thing I do is boil the water, make sure we have milk. That's the second thing. And the press is often not as clean as it should be. So, I know it's efficient.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anybody want to have the quickest? Anything?
Pretty quick. I kind of parallel it with other things I do.
Uh-huh.
So the night before, right before I go to bed, 4 scoops of Maxwell House, 3 cups of water, put the cup next to the machine, place powder and cream and sugar next to the machine, and have a spoon ready on a napkin before I go to bed. So maybe 30 seconds. In the morning, after getting ready, flick on the coffee machine, about a second. So while it's brewing, I throw something in the microwave to eat for breakfast, a breakfast burrito or something. After I eat that, the coffee's ready. So I pour it in a cup, throw some cream and sugar in there, mix it, put away cream and sugar, throw a spoon in the dishwasher, throw away used filter, leave open machine to air out, so maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and then I drink my coffee while I'm driving. So out the door I go.
Okay. This, however, nicely illustrates the importance of clarifying the context, because you included sleeping in there. And kind of your whole context was not just having a cup of coffee, but managing the household. Yeah. Okay. Come on. Okay, now, in planning your resources, some of the questions you have to ask, first of all, if you have dedicated resources for this, like your coffee pot, that's fine. On the other hand, if you have to boil water on the stove and your wife is using the stove and the microwave, then that complicates the picture. Okay. Facilities like Stowe, personnel. I mean, if your process of getting a cup of coffee means going to Starbucks, you have to assume that the barista there is going to be ready to serve you. Okay, so all of these things have to be negotiated. Okay, now again, having a cup of coffee is a very flat activity, not many layers of authority, but in hierarchic institutions, certainly the military, but I would say even the university, okay, one thing you have to look at is how the whole supervisory process works, okay? Because, I mean, very, very, very typically, okay, you need some higher authority or higher permission, and that can, well, I'll give you one perfect illustration. I mean, this project I'm working on right now, we've got a guy doing some consulting for him. He sent us his bill back in January, and we still haven't paid him. This is Wayne State. Okay. I won't editorialize any more beyond that, except to note that those kinds of delays happen within many large institutions. So you've got to recognize that sometimes the command structure affects your project. Okay. Resources being so critical, it's essential to communicate about them. And we've already talked about spreadsheets, Gantt charts, maybe having different budgets for person. You may keep a personnel budget. Here's how people are being assigned. You may keep a facilities budget. Here's who gets to use the kitchen at such and such a time. If it's a project that uses complex tools, maybe you have to budget these. In other words, potentially all of these kinds of things used. The key tool that we use, I mean, okay, this is Microsoft Project. Let's see if I've got any, oh, that's interesting, okay. Go away. Okay, this is the Gantt chart of the project I'm working on. We started in the middle of 2013, and it's going to go into 2016. This is the Gantt view. We can view it as a PERT chart. Okay. I can also, I don't know if, view it as a calendar. From my perspective, Microsoft Project is, or a similar tool, is absolutely essential. Okay. Now, if it's just a project involving you and your kitchen, like have a cup of coffee, you don't need to do a Gantt chart for have a cup of coffee. But if you've got a team, if you've got project that extends over weeks or months, the Gantt chart is absolutely essential. You could create something like this in Excel, and it would look okay, but something like Microsoft Project really is kind of critical. Drawing tools are useful. I mean, okay, Project, Excel, PowerPoint, those are standards, okay? And again, I mean, everybody here, you use word processor. Does anybody here use a typewriter anymore? I don't think. Occasionally, okay. But you also use a word processor. Yeah, okay, that's so completely standard. But may not use Project. You may use Excel. You may use PowerPoint. Again, PowerPoint is kind of a industry standard nowadays. So just you got to learn how to use PowerPoint. I mean, there's other presentation tools like Prezi that are just as good. Drawing tools sometimes just kind of if you want to sketch out some ideas. Okay, a drawing tool can be useful. Okay. But let's do another exercise. And what we're going to, there's going to be 3 steps to this exercise. Okay. The activity is present a concert. Okay. Step 1 is going to be to bound the activity. In other words, identify the inputs, controls, outputs, and mechanisms. Okay. Step 2 will be to do the work breakdown structure. And then step 3 will be for each task in the work breakdown structure, you'll identify inputs, controls, outputs, and mechanisms. Clear enough? Okay, here's specifying that a little bit more. What we're doing first of all with this is identifying the constraints. Okay. For something as sophisticated as a concert, you want this. Okay, stakeholder is as much a political concept. In other words, who's got an investment in this concert? Okay. Well, for a concert, you need musicians, yes. You probably want an audience. Okay, maybe not. If you're a professional, one of your stakeholders is going to be the critics. Okay, so you're going to think, what are the critics going to think? And also facilities. Obviously, you need a concert hall. Who controls the concert hall? The facilities and their ownership is one more stakeholder. In other words, point being, stakeholders you have to negotiate with. Okay. The musicians you got to hire, the audience you got to sell them the concert, the critics you got to woo, okay, and the facilities you need to bargain or negotiate. Okay, that's why I talk about these as stakeholders. And so, again, first of all, do the top level diagram, then do the work breakdown structure, and then do this kind of diagram for each task in the work breakdown structure. Okay, let's hear what everybody has. First of all, for the top level activity, present a concert. What are the different constraints? Inputs, outputs, controls, mechanisms. Okay, what are our different, what's the outputs first of all? Any other outputs?
Profit?
What? Any others?
Potentially a video event.
Okay. What are the inputs?
Artists and bands.
Well, that's more of a resource.
Schedule.
That's a control.
I think it's a bit of both. You have to create a schedule, which is an input.
Well, if you have to create a schedule, then that's inside the box. If you're handed a schedule, that's a control.
No, I agree on the latter. But I still think it's an input. I mean, I'm just.
Well, because, okay, an input, okay.
Where, those are inputs that result in.
The basic picture here is the activity changes the inputs into the outputs using the mechanisms according to the controls. Okay. And what are we transforming that schedule into? I mean, schedule is most typically a control. It's something that guides you.
Okay. Would it be ticket sales?
Ticket sales, is that an input or?
Selling tickets, I thought was also. I thought was
Making
like
money.
Selling tickets is an input that allows
No.
you to have the server, it's not anything.
Well, okay, well, here's the question. This is a good point. Okay. Is selling tickets part of the process of presenting a concert, or is it something that's outside the box here? Okay, so then it's a subtask. Okay.
Yeah, well, we would bring some.
Usually
It's a
you could do,
context,
but
yeah,
you can also just have the concert where people show up.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Like Woodstock. Did they sell concert tickets for Woodstock? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I tell you what, inputs is probably the trickiest part here. So let's look at the resources or controls mechanisms. Excuse me. First of all. Venue. What else?
Talent.
I just asked a general question about whether it's going to be for profit or whether it's like a cultural contribution. Is it for reasons of prestige? Is it free? Yeah.
Well, we just established that profit is an output.
I mean, what's the purpose of that would be like?
Okay, purpose is more typically a control. It's the kind of, controls are what guide you. Okay, see, the inputs are changed into the outputs using the mechanisms, but guided by the controls. Okay, so if your whole point is just to entertain people, then maybe you don't worry about profits. On the other hand, if your purpose is to make money, then you're going to do this a bit differently.
Would vendors be part of one of the mechanisms?
You mean like, what do you mean by vendors?
The people that are selling goods.
Yeah. I must admit, you're absolutely correct, even though I don't quite think of vendors. Yeah. So we need venue, vendor, talent. Do we need musical instruments? Now, you might expect the talent brings their own instruments, but if there's any piano solos involved.
Be a good promoter.
Promoter, venue, instruments, vendor, talent. That's 5, okay, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's go back to the controls now. What are the controls?
Audience size, intended audience size. So then that would determine what the video display.
Very good, yeah.
Their needs,
What?
what they want.
We could say audience preferences or
Also have musical preference.
what?
Musical preference, because that depends on the artist or band.
Musical preference, audience preference, hope.
What about the budget?
Budget is very typically a control. I mean, if you as the promoter decide we're going to have a $100,000 budget for this concert, then that's going to affect how you go about doing things. Okay, what are the inputs?
And tech design,
What?
tech design, like the technical design of a concert,
That's
allows for everything, you know.
okay, but see, are you transforming that into anything?
You're transforming it into a presentable concert. Because if the whole point of inputs result in presenting a concert, then certain people
Okay.
come before presenting a concert.
Okay. What other inputs? There's a big one we're missing. Can anybody figure out what it is? The audience. You need an audience. Unless you're just going to give it to an empty concert hall. Okay. Okay, so this is our context where the inputs are tech design and audience, the outputs are profit video, concert. We'll call it the concert event. and critics' reviews. Controls are musical performance. Oh, I just noticed, oh, audience preferences. Yeah, audience preferences as a control, purpose, and budget. Mechanisms are promoter, venue, instruments, vendors, talent. Have we left out anything? Okay, we'll take that and now break it down into 3 to 6 high-level activities. In other words, and there's a very, very motivated logic by my saying 3 to 6. See, you could take that and break it down into 20 activities very easily, okay? But 3 to 6 is much easier to keep in your head. And then if we want more detail, we take each of those and break it down further. Okay, in other words, rather than have a long string of activities, we want a kind of a hierarchical list of high-level activities and sub-activities. So break this down into 3 to 6 activities. Okay, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. In other words, we got to negotiate. Okay, because okay, this first pass, the activity was a given, and we want to limit the number of arrows to no more than 6, and we didn't bust that limit. But now we want to come up with 3 to 6 high-level activities, and we could just list everything everybody says, and it'd be a mess. So we're going to have to negotiate what are the high-level activities. Who wants to start off?
I would say you first need to research your audience, your area.
Who has another high-level activity? Anybody else give us a high-level activity or two?
Finding a facility.
What?
Finding a facility.
Anybody else?
Assemble the team, whether it's an orchestra or a band or whoever they are.
I'll say band just to keep it simple.
Your promotion is not
What?
promotion.
Okay, for these activities, we want verb phrases. Okay, so say promote. What else? we haven't yet played a note.
Then the event.
Okay. Verb phrase.
Play.
Okay. Anything else that when somebody wants, does this cover all of it, or is there other things we need to worry about?
Well, that should cover all of it, because the rest of the sub-steps to make it to the floor.
Say again, please.
That should cover all of it, because the other things we have is the sub-steps to what's already listed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Which of these, okay, so we've got 6 high-level activities here. Which one is driving the other 5? What? Okay. So our top-level activity is review the budget. Okay. Then what?
Research our audience.
Forgive my shorthand, this is the largest board I have. Okay, research the audience. Assemble. Well, okay, this is a serious question. Which is more of a driving thing, assemble the band or find the facility?
I think depending on your band would drive your search for facility.
Okay. And then the facility. Promote. Okay. Now, we're not going to do, we're going to break down just a couple of these just to review. Okay, let's take research the audience. What 3 to 6 activities would that break down to? I'm not going to be able to diagram it here, so let's just talk about it a second.
You want to determine the demographics, maybe?
Determine the demographics, yeah. Probably want to know something about their musical preferences. Probably want to know something about their ability to pay. Yeah. Okay, I mean, all of us know about how to do research, so we can figure that one out pretty well. Let's try something that we don't know so much about. How do you promote the concert?
You gotta advertise.
Advertise.
I always hear like free ticket giveaways on the radio station. So that is kind of a form of advertising.
Yeah. Probably the first thing you're going to do is just decide your promotional strategy. Whether you're going to use paid media or social media or word of mouth or giveaways or whatever. But then, as you're aware, the promotion itself is a major activity. Okay. Kind of what all of this illustrates, even though our whole activity is present a concert, okay, the actual concert itself, playing the concert, is the last step. There's a lot of other things that are driving it, and a lot of things that are constraining it. Now, okay, we've only had a couple of hours, so we haven't really, okay, if this, let me put it this way. If this were a real concert with a $100,000 budget, we would not be just zipping through it like this. We would be thinking through these issues more carefully. Okay. But for purposes of illustration, is everybody, and forgiving my lousy handwriting, but does everybody feel they pretty well understand this picture? Okay. Well, the final two steps, we're not going to do this at the moment, is to create the budget, because remember budget is part of what sets your context, okay, and create a schedule. Okay, in other words, when are we going to do this? Okay, so this process here, constraints, stakeholders, work breakdown, structure, budget, schedule, that generates your project plan. Okay. And some conclusions from all this. First of all, as a project manager, you got to know your tools. Okay. Partly because it makes your job easier. I mean, all this stuff could be done with pencil and paper or kind of practically any computerized tool, but your client will have a lot more confidence in you if you show spreadsheets, PowerPoint, Gantt charts, etc. Okay, so know your tools, step one. Okay, work breakdown structure, absolutely critical. Okay, because that turns into your project plan. I mean, we could take this right here and put it into Microsoft Project. I'll tell you what, let's, just for purposes of illustration, come on. Let's do two things. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, so our 6 tasks are review budget, research audience, assemble band, find facility, promote, and play. Okay, how long does each of these take? How much time do we want to spend reviewing the budget? 1 day, 10 days?
Maybe a day.
What?
A day?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you got a lot of confidence. How much time to research the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll call that, whoops. Of course, if I wasn't fumbling around with this mouse. Okay, how much time to assemble the band?
A week.
How much time to, oh, stop that. How much time to find the facility? What?
A week.
This is the easiest council.
How much time to promote it?
Oh,
Maybe like a month. Yeah, a couple months.
And the actual playing takes only a day, right?
See a few days.
Okay, we'll give it 2 days. Now, dependencies. Can we really, oh, come on, stop that. We probably won't research the audience until we've finished the budget, and we probably, okay, come on. Well, Microsoft Project is not cooperating with me. There, okay. And we'll probably, oops. Okay. Basically, you can see how this works, that if I wasn't such quite fumbling so much, we would have a simple Gantt chart. Okay, so know your tools, you create your work breakdown structure. Visual management, I can't emphasize this too much. Especially the more diverse your team, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So getting everybody on the same page with pictures. Okay, and finally, as a team leader, your job is to know your team, your job is to know your stakeholders, your job is to know your customer, your job is to manage all of the above. Okay, so this is in conclusion. So questions or comments? Yes?
I like the Gantt chart. That's very interesting. I think I may try to use that. What I've noticed in my project, though, I guess this happens more at the smaller levels, but there are many times where I thought something would take a day, and it took a lot longer. Or the reverse, something that you think is going to take forever, it's done in 10 minutes. And so that my scheduling often kind of gets out of whack, because, and also people take different amounts of time to do things, I've noticed. There's that, and I was wondering, hey, is there anything you can do to kind of address that topic?
Main thing is be brutally honest with yourself about what I have to negotiate. Like, for example, okay, let's take your example of going out to Starbucks. Okay, if it's just a matter of hopping in the car and driving out to Starbucks, that takes 5 or 10 minutes. If it's a task of, honey, can I use a car? It might take a little longer. There might be a complex. So kind of tasks and their interdependencies are always potentially negotiable. Okay, so, I mean, you have to have a fairly firm hand on what I have under control, what I have to negotiate, and what's totally out of my control. I'll give a couple of illustrations. I mean, I had a report that I had to do, and basically I budgeted all of yesterday for it. But as it turned out, it took me about 2 hours. I was very pleasantly surprised. But I mean, partly because, I mean, I had all the information I needed right at hand. I didn't need to, the only negotiation I needed to do to get this report done was to tell my wife that I couldn't walk the dog. Okay. But aside from that, no negotiation. On the other hand, tasks that took me far longer than I expected, again, it's because, well, here's the illustration I'm wrestling with right now. I've got a guy's coming to visit in June. I got to create a schedule for him, but I need input from half a dozen people and getting all these. So the whole process of creating his schedule has already stretched out over 2 weeks. Okay. You would think creating a schedule is something you could do. No, but I've got half a dozen stakeholders. So really, this is kind of a political judgment, okay? That, I mean, now, what I could do is just ride roughshod over a couple of my stakeholders and be prepared to pay the price. Or, again, and it's kind of what I'm comfortable with, okay? And, I mean, I don't want to rock the boat in my team, so this doesn't have to be firmed up for another month. So I'm just as happy to let it stretch out. But basic answer is, remember what I said earlier, keep the real schedule in your hip pocket. Okay, you got to know somewhere up here of just how much you can tolerate, and ideally a lot of slack in your schedule.
One more.
Certainly.
Just wanted to mention something that came up a couple of months ago where I had scheduled something at a university venue. And I went by the venue the day before to do something else. And I was told, oh, you can't have that venue tomorrow. It was all booked and set. The only reason I found out was because I went the day before to do something else. And I was not informed. It would have been horrendous. The next day I was expecting to show up, and we were talking about 40 people. And I added the bottom line about the concert. Have a contingency plan.
Very good.
You know, never, I thought everything was written in stone. And as it turned out, we actually shifted to another room. The only reason I had the other room is I hadn't canceled that other room. And
you had slack resources.
now, anytime I book anything, or so, I mean, I always try to have backups just in case. I mean, part of it was communication. I think I wasn't told when I was supposed to be told. But now, of course, I also go the day before. I always check. Remember, I'm coming tomorrow. I mean, all these things are in their own schedules, and everybody knows. But sometimes what you think is set in stone isn't at all. Just dimensions.
I had that happen with an event I planned once. It was an outdoor event. And I went, I think it was a week before the event, and there was construction everywhere. And I was like, I called somebody up, I was like, you guys aren't going to be doing construction, like, next week. And I took so many phone calls to, like, get reassurance that things would be settled before the event. I'm like, because you can't. Yeah, no one told me that construction was coming up. Like, oh yeah, this has been in the works forever. And I was like, why would nobody tell me this when I reserved this location?
Now, what happened to your venue?
We shifted to the back.
No, I mean, how did you get bumped, or?
No, we just moved the entire.
No. Why was it taken over? I'm trying.
Oh, there was an electrical maintenance problem, and it was. Everybody apparently was told but me, and I wasn't in, and then we couldn't be in that venue, and then we shifted. But every time I think about not having gone the Friday before, it gives me horrible. But I mean, now from here on out, I always. Some places I'm even triple booked because I don't want people to think I don't trust them, but I don't trust them. But part of this is communication, because if you get out of a certain loop, then things can go horribly wrong.
Well, this illustrates the importance of Slack resources. And one of my project management rules is panic early and often. Other questions or comments? Merrick, shall I turn it back over to you?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for coming, and thank you, Professor Bateau, for your presentation today. I hope you'd enjoy this workshop series, and we plan on offering another series next year, so stay tuned. There'll be different topics, and we look forward to maybe seeing your faces again. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much.